The world lost Pope Francis on April 21, 2025, at the age of 88, after a sudden and massive stroke. But what most people don't know is that, in his final years, he was dealing with a number of serious health issues, including high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and a severe case of pneumonia. Among the dietary habits that may have contributed to this decline, one everyday food stands out, something that's a staple on millions of tables around the world. In this video, we're going to dive into how this seemingly harmless food can speed up artery clogging and significantly increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Like millions of others around the world, Pope Francis grew up in a culture where cheese was more than just food. It was tradition, comfort, a symbol of sharing. In his Argentine-Italian diet, yellow cheeses like provolone, parmesan, and full-fat cheeses were always part of the picture. But here's the blind spot. What seems like a simple, even comforting food is actually one of the biggest threats to your arteries, and it might be sitting in your fridge right now. So what makes yellow cheese so dangerous? It all starts with what it's made of. A single average slice of cheddar cheese contains about 6 grams of saturated fat, and that's the exact kind of fat that directly fuels artery blockages. When you eat too much saturated fat, it raises your LDL levels, the so-called bad cholesterol. But the problem goes even further. Excess saturated fat also causes chronic inflammation in the inner walls of your blood vessels. And that's where the silent danger lies. Imagine your arteries like water pipes. The more fat builds up on the inside walls, the narrower the passage gets. But now imagine those walls also becoming rough, inflamed, unstable. That's exactly what the combo of saturated fat and inflammation creates inside your body. Fatty plaques start to form. They harden, and one day, often without a single warning sign, they rupture. At that moment, your body reacts as if it were a wound, forming a clot. If that clot completely blocks an artery, you suffer a heart attack. If it happens in your brain, it's a stroke. No warning, no second chance. It's especially important to remember that for adults over 40, especially those who are overweight, have high blood pressure, or are pre-diabetic, the body reacts much more strongly to this kind of fat. The metabolism is slower, the heart's protective mechanisms are already worn down, and there's barely any margin left. That means even small amounts eaten frequently. In your breakfast cheese sandwich, your slice of pizza at dinner, your weekend burger, pile up day after day, turning into a ticking time bomb in your chest. And it gets even worse when we're talking about ultra-processed cheese, like the infamous American cheese, those plastic-looking slices with the artificial taste. These products not only pack more saturated fat, but also contain chemical additives, excessive sodium and emulsifiers that disrupt your gut microbiome and trigger even more systemic inflammation. In other words, it's not just your cholesterol that takes a hit. Your whole body goes into defense mode. Your immune system is unnecessarily activated, and the perfect storm for cardiovascular disease is underway. But there's another crucial factor: sodium. Most yellow cheeses are loaded with salt. That puts even more pressure on your blood pressure, forcing your heart to pump against narrowed, inflamed, and stiff arteries. Every beat requires more effort, which wears down your heart muscle and drastically increases the risk of sudden failure, something that can strike anytime, anywhere. A lot of people wonder, but what about the calcium and the protein? Sure, cheese has those nutrients, but there are much safer ways to get them without putting your arteries at risk. And here's the hard truth that few are willing to say out loud. For people with cardiovascular risk factors, which includes most American adults over 40, regular consumption of yellow cheese does more harm than good. This isn't about moderation. It's about understanding that this food can be a direct progressive driver in your quiet march toward a heart attack or stroke. And that's the silent march many believe contributed to the stroke that took Pope Francis's life. Sadly, it's the same path thousands of people are on right now, without even realizing it. You might feel fine today, but the process is already underway, and the longer you keep this food on your plate, the narrower your chances of escaping become. Now, if you think yellow cheese is a threat on its own, get ready, because the next food might look healthy, might even be labeled natural, but what it does to your liver and arteries could be even more devastating. Want to know what it is? For years, Pope Francis kept his lifestyle simple and humble, just like he preached. He was known for turning down lavish meals, preferring light, traditional, almost homemade dishes. In interviews and accounts, he often mentioned his love for natural foods like bread, fruit, tea, and juice, especially orange or apple juice, a morning ritual since his days in Argentina. On the surface, this choice looked healthy, seemed harmless. But now, after the sudden decline in his cardiovascular health and the tragic outcome of a massive stroke, we have to ask a serious question. Could those repeated daily choices have been silently speeding up the end? Because that's exactly what store-bought fruit juice does. And the scariest part? You don't feel a thing. The image of juice as something natural is one of the biggest food traps of our time. When you pick up a carton at the store, it might say no added sugar, made with real fruit or 100% juice. But here's what nobody tells you, and few understand. Even the natural sugar from fruit, when consumed in excess and without the fiber from whole fruit, turns into a sweet poison for your arteries. Here's what really happens. When you drink a glass of industrialized orange juice, you're getting the sugar from 4, 5, sometimes even 6 oranges all at once, with zero fiber to slow down the impact on your body. That means a blast of fructose hitting your liver within minutes. And fructose, unlike glucose, can't be used by your body right away. It's almost entirely processed by the liver, which, when overwhelmed, turns it into fat. Some of that fat stays in the liver, slowly building up and eventually causing fatty liver disease. The rest is sent into your bloodstream as triglycerides, a type of fat that travels through your blood and settles in your arteries. And just like that, the clogging process begins, without you noticing. And it doesn't stop there. Constant exposure to high amounts of fructose also weakens the effect of insulin, pushing your body into a state of insulin resistance. That leads to more inflammation, more metabolic imbalance, and more plaque formation in your arteries. These plaques start out small, but gradually build up in the vessel walls, until one day one of them ruptures. And when that happens, your body responds by forming a clot. If it blocks a coronary artery, it's a heart attack. If it's in the brain, like in Pope Francis's case, it's an ischemic stroke, a sudden collapse, often without any warning. That's why fruit juice, even the kind labeled no added sugar, is so dangerous. Because it doesn't look like a threat, it looks healthy, it feels like a good choice. And that's why people drink it guilt-free, day after day, while inside their bodies are breaking down. In Pope Francis's case, even though he was never known for overeating, the danger was in the quiet, frequent choices. The constant fructose, the hidden sugar overload, the lack of awareness about how these habits truly affect the body. And that reflects the reality of millions of adults worldwide, especially those over 40, with a history of high cholesterol, hypertension, or excess weight. But here's an even more alarming detail. A single 10-ounce glass of 100% grape juice, often marketed as sacred or medicinal, can contain up to 36 grams of sugar. That's the equivalent of 9 teaspoons. Even though it's fruit sugar, the metabolic effect is intense. With every glass, your liver takes a hit, your blood thickens, your artery walls get inflamed, and your heart has to work harder, with more pressure, more strain, until it can't anymore. That's why when we talk about real prevention, the kind that saves lives, spares families pain, and could have protected even a spiritual leader like the Pope, we need to be brutally honest about what we put in our glass. Store-bought fruit juice is a dangerous illusion. It's the liquid cigarette of a new generation. It looks like health, but it's just as destructive as the worst ultra-processed foods. And you could be drinking it every day, thinking you're doing something good for yourself. So before you open the next juice box, ask yourself, is it really worth fueling a process that could lead you to a heart attack or stroke, suddenly with no warning, just like what happened to the Pope? Now, if that shocked you, brace yourself. Because the next food, no sugar, no fat, but what it does to your arteries is just as aggressive. It's in almost every American household and may be the #1 cause of chronic inflammation, silently destroying your cardiovascular system from the inside out. Want to find out what it is? Few foods are as universal as bread. It's on the breakfast table, in afternoon snacks, and even at the altar during communion. And for Pope Francis, bread was always a symbol of humility, sharing, and simplicity. Since his youth in Buenos Aires, he kept the habit of eating white bread, usually with a drizzle of olive oil or alongside a cup of tea. A small, humble gesture for sure, but over time, that simple daily habit may have quietly fueled a slow-burning inflammation that ultimately led to the tragic stroke that took his life. Because white bread, especially the mass-produced kind, is one of the most dangerous foods for your heart. And yet, hardly anyone talks about it as seriously as they should. Let's get straight to it. White bread is made from refined flour. That means the original grain has been stripped of nearly all its fiber, vitamins and minerals, leaving behind almost nothing but pure starch. And once that starch enters your body, it turns into glucose almost instantly. The effect it has on your blood sugar is just as sharp and intense as a spoonful of table sugar. So, what does that have to do with your arteries? The answer lies in insulin, the hormone responsible for regulating blood sugar. Every time you eat white bread, your blood sugar spikes, and your pancreas responds by releasing a big dose of insulin. If it happens once in a while, your body can handle it. But when it happens daily, as it did for Pope Francis, and as it does for millions of people over 40, your system starts to malfunction. Insulin stops working the way it should. Your body enters a state of chronic insulin resistance. And it's in that environment that fatty plaques begin forming and clogging your arteries. On top of that, consistently high insulin levels also push the liver to produce more triglycerides, worsen cholesterol levels, and increase systemic inflammation. It's as if every slice of white bread is lighting a tiny spark of inflammation. Over time, that spark turns into a fire. The inner lining of your arteries begins to suffer micro-injuries. The body tries to repair these by laying down fat. That fat builds up, hardens, and eventually blocks blood flow. In Pope Francis's case, someone already dealing with type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure in his later years, white bread acted like a daily trigger, making his vascular health worse. Even though his diet was moderate overall, the regular consumption of white bread stacked layer after layer of risk on a cardiovascular system already weakened by age, genetics, and chronic conditions. And that's the real danger. White bread is seen as basic, neutral, even sacred, but it's not. It's a high glycemic food, low in nutrients and highly inflammatory, especially when eaten without fiber, protein, or healthy fats. It causes sharp spikes and crashes in blood sugar that not only mess with your metabolism, but put extra strain on your heart. Every glucose spike is like a mini assault on the endothelium, the delicate lining of your arteries. According to studies by the American Heart Association, diets high in refined carbs like white bread are directly linked to higher levels of inflammatory markers in the blood, such as C-reactive protein. And when those markers go up, the risk of heart attack, stroke, and sudden death skyrockets. It's like living with a ticking time bomb inside your body, fed one bite at a time. What's truly painful is knowing it could have been prevented. Pope Francis, like so many others, probably was never warned about the real dangers of this type of food. To him, bread symbolized faith and simplicity. But to his body, it was a steady source of metabolic stress. And when the system can't take it anymore, the cost is paid in the worst way. A sudden stroke, no warning, no time to respond. How many people today are repeating that same pattern, thinking it's a harmless choice? How many adults keep eating white bread every day, not realizing they're feeding a constant inflammation right inside their chest? And the irony, that bread is often paired with yellow cheese and fruit juice, the two foods we already explored earlier. A deadly trio. A normal breakfast that might be the quiet beginning of the end. If white bread has you concerned, brace yourself. The next food is even more common and even sneakier. It shows up in almost every meal outside the home, including those served to the Pope during his apostolic visits around the world. And what it does to your blood pressure, kidneys, and arteries is absolutely devastating. During his years as the leader of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis traveled the globe. He took part in diplomatic meetings, religious celebrations, and missionary visits. At each of these moments, he was welcomed with local meals, often made with great care, but also loaded with a silent, deadly ingredient: salt. More specifically, hidden salt, the kind that doesn't come from a salt shaker but is everywhere, in bottled sauces, bouillon cubes, cured meats, processed meals. It was this hidden salt that followed the Pope for years. And it may well have helped speed up the collapse of his vascular system, directly contributing to the stroke that took his life. And you could be consuming that same hidden threat right now, without even realizing it. Unlike sugar or fat, salt rarely sets off alarm bells. It has no calories, it doesn't taste sweet or greasy, but its impact on your cardiovascular system is brutal. Too much salt throws off your body's fluid balance, silently drives your blood pressure higher, and over time causes irreversible micro-damage to your arteries. And that's where this story ties back to what happened to Pope Francis. In the final years of his life, he managed his hypertension with medication, a common situation among older adults. But here's what many people don't realize. Even with meds, blood pressure still spikes when there's too much sodium in the diet. And sodium is in just about everything we eat. Bread, cheese, processed foods, frozen meals, ready-to-eat soups, seasoned meats, sauces, condiments, breakfast cereals. The list goes on. Adults should consume no more than 1,500 milligrammes of sodium per day, yet one typical meal out can easily double that. For Pope Francis, who often attended diplomatic lunches and community meals around the world, avoiding hidden salt was nearly impossible. Large-scale meals, made with preservatives and flavor enhancers, push sodium levels into the danger zone, especially for someone with a history of high blood pressure or heart issues. And it's not something that happens overnight. It's a slow, cumulative, and deadly process. When excess salt enters the body, it causes fluid retention. That increases blood volume, which means the heart has to pump harder. The result is constant pressure on the artery walls. Over the years, that pressure causes tiny cracks. The body tries to patch them the only way it knows how, with fat deposits. That's how artery-clogging plaques are formed. And if one of those plaques ruptures, as it likely did in the Pope's case, the body rushes to plug the tear with a clot. If that clot blocks a brain artery, the result is an ischemic stroke, exactly what ended the life of Pope Francis. And this risk? It's a lot closer to you than you think. Even if you never add salt at the table, chances are you're still getting double or triple the recommended daily amount. A single serving of jarred tomato sauce can have 500 milligrams of sodium. One slice of ham, 300 milligrams. A single bowl of powdered soup, over 900 milligrams. And the worst part? This industrial salt doesn't come with potassium or beneficial minerals. It comes alone, harsh, damaging, quietly eroding the health of your blood vessels. Pope Francis, with his demanding schedule and simple yet often processed meals during trips and events, was caught in the same pattern affecting millions around the world. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, he didn't eat fast food, but that didn't protect him from the danger of hidden salt. The same salt now found in over 70% of the products at your local grocery store. It's crucial to understand, hypertension isn't just high numbers on a monitor. It's a silent battle happening inside your body. Every heartbeat in an inflamed, narrowed artery is a risk, and salt is the fuel that keeps that battle going. How many times have you thought you were eating healthy just by cutting out sugar or fat while totally ignoring sodium? How many light meals are actually saturated with salty preservatives? That kind of oversight, repeated every day, is what kills silently. Despite the best medical care, Pope Francis couldn't escape the cumulative damage of a lifetime of too much salt. And now the only way to honor that wake-up call is to change, while we still can. But if salt already has you concerned, wait until you meet the final food in this series. A product that seems modern, convenient, even healthy, but triggers an inflammatory reaction in your blood so intense that experts compare it to drinking motor oil. And yes, the Pope consumed it from time to time too. Want to find out what it is? In his final years, Pope Francis faced the same dietary challenges that millions of people deal with today. Even with a moderate diet, he wasn't immune to the hidden dangers of modern food. Whether at everyday meals or official events, it was common for dishes to be prepared with what's often called vegetable oil, usually soybean, corn, or canola oil. These oils have been marketed as healthy alternatives for decades. They're used for grilling, frying, dressing salads, sautéing vegetables. But what no one told him, not even the Pope, is that these oils have become one of today's biggest drivers of chronic arterial inflammation. Yes, the oil you cook with every day might be speeding up the very same process that led Pope Francis to a fatal stroke. The root of the problem lies in the kind of fat these oils contain. While they're not high in saturated fat like cheese or processed meats, they are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids, especially linoleic acid. In small, balanced amounts, omega-6 is necessary, but the imbalance between omega-6 and omega-3 in the modern diet is so extreme, it creates a wildfire of inflammation throughout the body. Today, the average Western diet contains 15 to 20 times more omega-6 than omega-3. That means your body is being hit daily with pro-inflammatory fats that get incorporated into your cell membranes, altering how they function and triggering reactions that lead to unstable plaque buildup in your arteries. And that constant inflammatory state likely played a role in the decline of Pope Francis's cardiovascular health. Even with a simple diet, these oils were everywhere, in fried foods, bakery bread, cookies served during travels, sautéed vegetables prepared for formal dinners. There was no way to avoid them, because today nearly all restaurant and commercial food is made with refined vegetable oils. But the damage doesn't stop with inflammation. The way these oils are made, through high heat, chemical solvents like hexane and then deodorization, alters them significantly. Whatever benefits they might have had are wiped out. What's left are sources of lipid peroxides and unstable free radicals that damage your DNA, your proteins, and the very walls of your arteries. And when these oils are heated, like during frying or grilling, they form even more toxic compounds, including oxidized aldehydes, which are directly linked to increased risks of heart attacks, strokes, and even cancer. Recent studies published in the Journal of Clinical Lipidology show that long-term consumption of refined vegetable oils is associated with higher levels of oxidized LDL, the most dangerous form of cholesterol, the kind that sticks to artery walls and kickstarts atherosclerosis. In other words, it's not just about your total cholesterol number, it's about the kind of metabolic environment you're creating in your body. And that environment is shaped every single day by the fats you choose to eat. Even Pope Francis, despite his spiritual awareness, likely never knew that the small drizzle of oil used to prepare a piece of fish, a bowl of rice, or sautéed vegetables was quietly fueling a fire inside his body. Not because he was careless, but because the real risks of these oils are still ignored, even in medical circles. And that's a mistake that's costing lives. You might be cutting back on sugar, you might be watching your salt, you might even go for light options. But if you're still cooking, sautéing, frying, or dressing your meals with refined vegetable oil every day, you're accelerating the breakdown of your arteries. And the worst part, you won't feel a thing in the early years. There are no clear signs while it's happening, but inside your arteries are under attack. They're oxidizing, inflaming, hardening, and one day, just like with Pope Francis, that process reaches its breaking point. A plaque ruptures, a clot forms, blood flow stops, and in seconds everything can change or end. The real tragedy in this story is that it could have been avoided. Pope Francis lived a life of service, of faith, of simplicity. But even he, with access to world-class medical care, fell victim to the lack of awareness around the dangers hidden in modern food. And now, with his passing, comes a wake-up call we all need to take seriously. This is no longer just about eating good or bad. It's about understanding what every bite is doing inside your body, and more importantly, what it might be setting up for your future, quietly. You don't have to wait for a breakdown to make a change. You can start today. And maybe, just maybe, save your own life before it's too late.